Hi, my name is Susan Medina, and today I'll be going over Controversy 6, which is should older people be protected from bad choices? Throughout the presentation, keep in mind of an older person who has rather been neglected by people who decide to help them out, whether it's inside the home or assisted living, or even their family because they consider them a burden or a financial burden. So then you get a full idea of all the neglect and abuse that can happen in their lives. How many mistakes have you made in your life? I myself have made quite a few, and I'm still young. So I wonder, does age help with being protected, or does that make you more vulnerable when you get older? People tend to believe that when you get older, you tend to make more mistakes and you aren't fully thinking clearly. So, with that in mind, aging does tend to make people more vulnerable, whether that's physically, socially, sometimes even emotionally. So, with different components lead to different situations, we need to know how to handle them and what questions to ask. Some of the questions we need to keep in mind, depending on the situation, is whether there's abuse or neglect that is present, the sexuality, crime and safety of older people, and the huge one is, are they competent enough to make their own decisions? Part of this controversy is whether they are capable or not of making their own choices, if they are fully coherent and they know what they're doing, or rather, if there's someone else that needs to be making these full decisions for them, which is something we'll be going into in a little bit. So sometimes when we see older people get into their later ages, we see them acting differently, which causes other people to raise an eyebrow and want them to act more their age and versus this younger person they're trying to be and make more positive a situation, which can lead to their family members or others feel like they are incompetent of making their own decisions and they are just rushing into things or they're just not thinking clearly. So with that, we need to think, how do we protect the elders and how do we do that if they need help but they can't get it for some reason? Sometimes there's cases of neglect and abuse and they can't get out of a situation that they need to and get a hand. So with that, if they can't get a helping hand, that's where interference needs to occur, and that is where the family might need to step in and take control or just help with situation. But that can be hard because we need to know what the right time is because sometimes with interference, the actions can cause a danger if there's certain situations because every single one is different. So it's important to keep a lot of vocab in mind when it comes to this controversy because, for instance, civil commitment is when you can be placed in a psychiatric hospital against their will and you have a loss of personal liberty. And then you also have guardianship of a person when they decide where the older person lives and gets treatment. But with that, you also have guardianship of estate, which means power to manage property and take over financial affairs. Now, these are important terms because a lot of times you see these happen because of abuse or neglect. And going with that is that the guardians are actually very rarely revoked once they are appointed. It is not common. And these are important to keep in mind though, because the fact that the biggest threat for older people is from financial exploitation, which can be a problem considering the guardianship of estate has that power. And this is because older people are very, very vulnerable to fraud and scams, whether that is something medication when they're taking pills thinking that they're getting helped and they're really not, or whether it's getting pickpocketed or something technology wise, they are just a very easy target. People 65 age and older are actually 30% of the scam victims that we see, and that is 14.5% of the total population. So with the scams, a lot of times we do see the real estate, the stocks, and the business investments that really come for them because they are such an easy target. Those are the ones that they bring to them because if they are in a money pit and they need help, they'll say, hey, we have these business investments. Do you want to join in? We'll get you money back. The biggest target is widowed women because they think that they have never done any type of financial stuff since their husband has been alive with them their entire adult life, but that's not always the case, so they are a very easy target for that. And if there is a victim, they need to report the financial exploitation, but the problem with that is how do we know? And that's where people who need to step in come into play. So, why this is all an issue and how it all started is because we, right now, and we still will have the largest population of older people in assisted living homes, and in general, we have a large population of older people. And there's always going to be some sort of abuse or being victimized and neglect, as the way they're going right now. With that, though, it's hard to say because it's hard to measure the abuse and neglect because there's a lack of consistency with it being defined and explained. But as of right now, we can see that there is 10% of older population of the adults have experienced some type of abuse, whether that's like financial or in the nursing homes or even by their own family. So we also see that the crime with older adults are actually very low. Some people think that once you get older, you go crazy and you go all out, but that's actually really not true. Age 65 and older experience lower rates for serious crimes with like robbery, personal theft, assault, and rape. We don't see that a lot. We see more of little crimes from them. So, for the controversy for the future here is the baby boomers are the main target right now, are the main ones at hand to hope for because of the fact here soon, or even right now, they're starting to go in assisted living homes or they're starting to have to depend on other people. So it's very good to start looking at the potential risks and what can happen with that. So we need to look at the cultural evaluations, all the risk factors, so we can have less neglect and abuse. And those risk factors are stuff like psychopathology, alcohol or substance abuse, family history of abuse, whether they are dependent on others for money, or even the caregiving burden. That can be a huge flag. And also social isolation. And you don't really think about it a lot, but if there's a reoccurrence of a stressful life event from their younger days, that can also have a very big impact. So we need to help give a nursing home a better reputation by somehow helping with the neglect and abuse in there. And then a big part to it is let the older adults make their own decisions if they're capable to. If they're coherent and know exactly what they're doing, then let them make their own decisions. If there's something there's more skepticalism on, then we can go from there and their people who watch them can help them make a better decision. So my opinion is that the older caregiving system in general does need a lot of help. There needs to be improvement on acts, for instance, like the elder justice. We need to make sure that there is no abuse happening in the nursing homes or assisted living homes. We see that a lot, especially nowadays, all over social media. We need to figure out how to get a better system going of how to measure the abuse because right now there is no set definition or explanation. And even if there is a report of it, because there is mandatory reporting, it's not very common that actually actions are followed up with it. There might not be any repercussions. And
I do
also is
believe
that
that
older
if
people
older
do
people
still
have
need
made a lot of their
assistance
own
and
decisions,
are
there are a
always
lot of
if
things
they're
that don't
able
see happening
to
on
or
the
are
inside.
there are
Whether
certain
it is
situations
situations
if they
where
do make a
things
crazy
that are being
bad
neglected
choice,
and
then
can't get
because
help.
maybe
And
just
a lot of times
have
older people
them
are getting taken advantage
reevaluate,
of,
get
whether
some
it's
other
by
people
family
and
or
outside
from
perspective,
them over their shoulders,
and to where they
sometimes
can make
for
a better
big
decision.
financial decisions.